I hope you're having a wonderful day. Mac here, and I have one of my favorite plants here with me, and you can see how beautiful this is. This is blooming a little early, but this is a hellebore. Some people call them Christmas rose or Lenten roses. Look at this flower. This is a herbaceous perennial, and this is a wonderful example of a hellebore. Now, I've been growing them for years. This is a new one I just picked up, but they look really great in pots. They go in pots and they work in borders. Then the leaves are kind of thick and leathery. They are year-round with the foliage, so you'll always have leaves. You can always find them. But that's a hard thing because, you know, a lot of plants, they come in, they bloom, and then they go away. Some of them completely fade away, and you may cut into that bulb later on as you're trying to plant something else. But these will always have some leaves above ground. In the summertime, they're more dormant. They're not actively growing, but this one is really great. This particular one is Alma, A-L-M-A, and this one will actually bloom, check this out, from September to around April. And I'm here in the UK, and it will bloom from September to April. It's going to continue to put out blooms, and that is a very long blooming and growing season. Also, that's the time of year typically where you don't have other plants blooming. You have some of your late plants which are going over late into the fall, but these are one of the only plants that I know that actively bloom, aggressively bloom during the coldest and most miserable time of year for most gardeners. But keep a spot in your garden for some hellebores. Now, this one is white, and it actually has white, and the interior blooms here is going to be a nice little red speckles. So you have some nice little red speckles, white bloom, those little red speckles in the interior, but they come in a lot of different colors. Some of them are actually, the bloom flowers are actually more green. You can even see here on these younger ones, haven't really all the way come all the way out. You can see the green. Some of them stay green. Some of them are red, burgundy. I was at a garden center quite recently, and I saw some really beautiful color ones. There are several who are not blooming yet. They're smaller. I don't even think they're going to bloom. This is a larger plant. You could tell it's a larger plant. So if you buy this size, you're going to get a lot of blooms. If you buy smaller pots and all you see is a little bit of foliage, just say you have this amount of foliage and you have that pretty picture of what it's going to look like when it blooms, it may not bloom until the following year and need some time for it to grow. Again, these are herbaceous perennials, so they'll be around for a while, but every year it's going to get a little larger. How do you fertilize it? In that summer period when it's not actively growing and needs a bit of nitrogen fertilizer, you can tell it's going to need a bit of nitrogen. Look at those leaves. But when it is blooming, you're going to need some potassium and phosphorus. So as you head into that fall season, you need potassium and phosphorus. It needs shade. This is a light to partial shade plant. You don't need to put it in deep shade, but you also shouldn't put it out in the sun. Light to partial shade, and that's where I've always grown mine at. A side of the house that doesn't get as much sun. I use them in borders next to the home, and they come in really well. Also consider if you're in an area that gets a lot of deep, heavy snow, the plants are pretty sturdy. They can hold up with that, but you may want to put it in an area that's a little more sheltered just so it won't get covered so much in snow, because that's the time of year, if it's in that winter season, that these flowers are at their best. But I've had them. These blooms actually come poking up through snow in the middle of winter, and I found that to be really beautiful because, again, it's the blooming in the time of year when you're not getting a lot going on. You're planning and you're preparing, but this is actively blooming during one of those less visual time of years for the garden. Now, you can see the blooms are beautiful, and they come in these reds and they come in white. They're not going to give you as much vibrant color as, say, your summer blooming flowers, but it matches the season. I think the season goes best with a flower that is beautiful, but not just taking up all of your space. There are other flowers that bloom in the winter. Now, I've had this bloom right along with some winter blooming camellia, and those bloom in the winter as well. Not always. You have to look at those. I've had camellia that will bloom from early spring all the way around across that year. So you want to get a look at those. But hellebores, really wonderful plants. Again, hellebores bloom predominantly from the fall straight through to the early spring. This is a wonderful example of a healthy plant. They tend to be pretty resistant when it comes to insects. You could get a bit of aphids on it, and you can have some problems with slugs. So I keep an eye out for those. But these leaves are thick and leathery, and most things just don't bother them. Another great thing is that when this plant is actively growing, most insects are dormant. Again, those leaves year round, but when it's blooming, when it's giving its best, it's giving us all, and those flowers are out, it's cold, most bugs and insects just aren't available during that period. So keep your eye out for a hellebore. Add it to your garden. If you don't have one, pick up some. They're perennial, so they'll be around. You buy it, and then you can learn to separate it a little later. So if you don't have one, add one to your garden. Hellebores. Take care.